Hello, my YouTube family. So it is a Monday night and it is storming like crazy here in Colorado Springs. But it's a perfect night to do a video. So I think that my introduction and just giving you what I want to talk about and stuff I want to talk about, I'm going to go ahead and just start off by giving you background as far as where I grew up. So, as I mentioned in video log 1, when my parents separated, like when they divorced, my mom decided to relocate to South Carolina. Now, this was in the 90s, the early 90s. So, as a kid, I didn't even realize the impact on how far we were moving. Like, one minute we're in New York, and next minute we're on a road trip, and it's hot, and we're somewhere that's not the city, but I have a whole bunch of family. So it was never really weird, and the distance didn't really set in until I got a little older, and I understood, oh my gosh, I'm so far away from my dad, I'm so far away from my other family, like my dad's side of the family. And me being the age that I was when I left, I knew everybody. So I guess you can say as I got older, the divorce I started to get pissed off about it. I wanted my parents together. And then coming to the realization of my mom was huge, because I've always seen her with women. I've always seen her around women. So it never really clicked that, okay, they're together. Like, my mom's into women. She'd have parties. Because I just remember as a kid, like, sneaking out and looking at my mom and a lot of her gay friends. And it was normal. I don't want to say it was normal, but because I saw that as a kid and they were always around us, my mom had a lot of gay friends. And man, even as a kid, my mom was an advocate for safe sex, equality, and equality for all. And I don't know, I just never realized what it really was until I got older. So moving back to South Carolina, I want to say I was 5. My brother was about 3, 2 or 3. Maybe I was 4 or 5. I'm not too sure. And I had my grandmother out there, had some aunts, had some cousins, so it was really nice. We got settled, and my mother, of course, she had a lover, she had a partner, and we ended up, at first, from staying at my grandmother's house, I guess my mom got everything set and together not too long after that, as far as getting us settled, like, in our old place. And she ended up bringing her partner with her 2 kids. And mind you, these 2 kids are like my siblings, because they were always around me. I just figured they were family too, which they were. Growing up wise, like, we did everything together. We lived together, we slept together, we ate together, we all had to take showers, we all had chores. It was a family unit for sure. So it was different. And I remember, I don't know how old I was turning, if I was turning 7 or 8 or 6, I don't know. I just was a little girl, and we had been in South Carolina for some time, and I just remember my dad flying in as a surprise for my birthday, and it was the most awesome surprise I ever got in my life. Like, I've gotten awesome surprises throughout my whole life, but seeing my dad, and it was just nice, and I've always loved him, and I've always cared about him. I always missed him, like, even when we were separate, you know what I mean? Now, him and my mom can go back and forth all day, and they haven't been, but they can go back and forth as far as why they're not together. And bottom line, it just didn't work out, I did at that time living with my mom, because I was living with my mom and living with her lover and the kids, and my mom was the one that worked, and her lover, I'm not going to mention her name, but her lover was the one that took care of us, and I guess in a sense was like a housewife. All she had to do was cook, clean, and feed us and take care of us, and make sure we got to school, all that stuff. But her lover was not patient, very impatient. Very, very abusive. And what's funny is she really never did it when my mom was there. Like she always, would do it when like my mom was at work. And my mom was a single parent, and she worked like 3 jobs. My mom was never home. My mom was always working. And she loved and trusted this woman with her kids. And that was the first door into my madness. So that right there was when everything started, at that young of an age. And I wasn't even 9 or 10. I knew it was before the age of 9 that I had to go through this. And it got to the point where the beatings and the punishment and just getting in trouble for little things that kids do as an adult. Like now when I look back on it, I'm like, why was I beat for that? Why was I hit for that? The fear that I had accumulated, I guess, for that short amount of time that, we were living there, the fear just got to the point where I didn't even want to come home. Like, that's just how I felt. Like, I felt so terrified that a part of me was naive and I thought my mother knew. And that's just as a kid. I'm like, there's no way mom cannot know that this woman is hurting me. No, I did have a little brother. He, I can say, thankfully, didn't and was not exposed to that abuse. He was singled out, and I'm not too sure if it was because he was a boy. I really don't know the psyche of this woman. I just know she was nuts. She was impatient, and she made my life hell. And she was the first one to hurt me. The first one to actually hurt me, And she took my childhood. That's what I feel like. I felt like this woman took my childhood. And it's something that I've learned in talking to people, and, it is what it is. It happened. It's over. But I'm still angry sometimes, because I was just so young. Her daughters experienced the same things I did, and that's something I once again learned as I was older, because for some reason at that time, in that moment, in that house, I felt like I was her target. And I just remember one time in school, when we were in elementary school, and I'm leaving, getting ready to go home. Everybody's getting ready to go home for the day. And I just remember I threw the biggest tantrum, and I did not want to go on that bus. And I didn't want to go home. And the teacher just kept asking me, like, why don't you want to go home? Like, why don't you want to go home? And I was like, I'm going to get beat if I go home. Now, the reason why I said that, it wasn't because of everything that's been happening in the house. That morning, actually going to school, I was running behind. I was really late, and the bus was there, and I was kind of late going on to the bus. And I just remember her yelling at me and saying, when you get home, I'm going to mess you up. Like, she technically said, I'm going to fuck you up. But yeah, she said that to me. And I know what she meant by fucked up, because I've been fucked up. She beat me. She beat the shit out of me, and for nothing. For me being a kid, if we were playing and I fell, boom, that was a reason to get hit. If we were playing too loudly, that was a reason to get hit. It was just unnecessary beatings, you know what I'm saying? That I believed her. So I didn't want to go home. I was like, nope. And I told the teacher. And I told They made me talk to a guidance counselor, and I told them. And that's when they decided to bring it to my mom's attention. Now, this story really does upset me, so I don't want to promote smoking. Smoking is horrible. Vaping is no better, but I tend to vape from time to time, and it's no better than cigarettes, guys, so I don't advocate it. It's still bad for you. But I'm gonna vape right now because I'm feeling a little nervous right now talking about this story. So, pretty much what happened was they brought it to my mom's attention. So when they brought it to my mom's attention, my mom had like a sit down talk with me, and she just wanted to know like why I never told her. She wanted to know what was going on. I still could not tell my mom. Like, that's just how bad it was. I told her I was scared. I didn't want to go home because I didn't want to get beat, you know? And of course her lover was like, oh, I was just playing, you know, I wasn't going to do that. Like, that was the whole story she told my mom, like, when we got to the house. And I want to say not even a few months after that incident, okay, I did talk to my grandmother. May she rest in peace. I did talk to her, and I did tell her how this woman she scared me and she was hurting me. And my grandmother made an attempt to talk to my mom about it, but I want to say something major happened, and we ended up being removed immediately. And not from social workers or anything. My mom just moved us out, period. Okay, now, a couple of months after that situation with me not wanting to come home from school, during the weekends or doing like after school, she would, my mother's lover would have a friend that lived in the neighborhood that she would go to, and they had kids, and she'd bring us along, and she'd be there chit-chatting, socializing while we were playing with the kids. All right, and that is where my innocence, I want to say, was just out the door. Now, once again, my mother or my father didn't have anything to do with this. This was something that just happened in the company that I was in, you know, and my mother's lover had, not only was she impatient and abusive, she had no common sense. And I think not everyone, because they have a child, has that instinct. You know, there's just people who don't, and I really felt like this woman didn't have that, you know. There was like an older kid. He was a lot older. There was some young kids, but there was an older kid, and that we used to play hide and seek, is what this is like how it always starts, right? Hide and seek. But yeah, that's honest to God. We were literally playing hide and seek, and we'd play inside the house or outside the yard around the house. And I just remember hiding under the house, hiding. You know, I was hiding under the house. I was brave back then. I wasn't scared of snakes or spiders. And it was like a younger kid who was counting and looking for us, and the older guy was playing with us. He comes under the house with me, like where I'm hiding, and he starts, I don't know, he just started to touch me, you know, and I don't know what happened. The game ended. I ended up crawling out, but she would take us several times to this house. So it was maybe 2 houses down from where we lived. So this was a regular thing that we would do. We would go over there, hang out. We got to the point where even inside the house, like, he had a game system, and I'd be in his room. We'd all be in the room, and somehow managed. I don't know how it managed, but I would manage to be alone with him in that room, and the touching just started. It just kept going. Like, the touching, it was just so uncomfortable, and I hated it, you know. And I just remember one time we had to sleep over there, and how devastated I was, and how scared I was, and how I couldn't even sleep that whole night. Now, there was a little kid there. He wasn't even 4. Okay, I just remember him. I was a lot older than him, and he can walk and he can talk, so I want to say he was about 3 or 4. And the night that we had actually spent the night, as a child talking, he was telling me how, his he said it just plainly, and I can't even say it. Like, it just completely breaks my heart. But he plainly was telling me how his daddy would touch his butt, his boom boom, he used to call it, or his little butt. And he's like, "Daddy hurt my butt," and I'm just like, you know, that was terrifying to hear. Of course, his dad wasn't in that house. But just the fact that this little boy had already been exposed to something like that, and it made me think about his big brother, because it was his big brother, that was touching me. And it made me think, was he abused? Like, was he abused as well? And, they say it's a cycle, and I strongly agree and disagree with that, because I would never hurt a child, and I would never touch a child inappropriately. But I feel like people acted out differently, and his little brother, who wasn't even 4, was abused. I don't put it past that the older one was not. So I'll never know, but may God be with him. I know now that I'm pretty sure he didn't know what he was doing. He was just doing what he knew, and unfortunately, once again, this plays into my madness, because because I was holding it all in, life around me went on, but I was very angry. I started holding in a lot of anger because I wasn't talking to anybody about it. And pretty much, long story short, the last incident that happened, that was just the last strike, I guess, with my mom, is me and her lover's daughter. We got into a fight. We were fighting like kids do, and she took it a step further one night and took a knife out. And not only did she take a knife out, but she cornered me into a corner with a knife that I didn't know what to do. I just figured, let me grab the knife and get out of the way, which I did. And not only did I cut all the nerves and had to get stitches and all that, to put salt on the wound, when her mother came in and saw all the blood and saw like my skin hang, because my skin was literally hanging off, like my finger was just hanging. Like, that's just how, because the knife was coming, and then I grabbed it like that and I twisted it, so all it did was cut. It was just crazy, but the things you'll do to survive or whatever, like, I honestly felt like my life was at risk. And I would tell her to put it away, get down, and she just didn't. She just didn't. And it bothered me. It bothered me horribly that when her mother came in and saw all the blood and everything, they wrapped my hand up, the police get called, and everyone's wanting to know what happened to my finger. And at this point, because I'm screaming and I'm in so much pain, I hear her say, "Oh, we were playing and I cut her with a butter knife." And I just remember being so mad, because I was like, it was not a butter knife. A butter knife is not going to cut off my tendons and all this crap. Like, of course, that's not what I was thinking as a child. I was just thinking, you're a liar. That's not what happened. It's not what happened. And I remember they were holding my mouth, and I was like, that's not true. Like, that's not true. And long story short, I woke up in the hospital. My grandmother was in front of me. My aunts were there. And I just remember from that point on, I was living with my grandmother when I got removed from that house. So I want to say I was about, at this point, after some time had passed, all the damage that could have done in the beginning was done. So this is how it started. And at that point, we were at my grandmother's house, and I was in a safe place, and I was being taken care of. So it was really nice, but I had a lot of anger. And that's when that book was closed, another book opened, and that was coming to terms with my mother's sexuality, coming to terms with having a gay mom in South Carolina in 1992. It was And then of all the places, Summerville, South Carolina, you know? And it's just crazy. I went through a lot in the schools there, and um, it's funny because I never thought about it. And I don't know if it was because we were in New York. I don't know. It's just my mom being gay was never didn't have that magnifying glass over there. When we moved to the in the South, it felt like my whole family was just under that magnifying glass. And I started school, and that's when I started to really learn what came with having a mom like that. You know, and then people, you know, and have friends come over, and my mom has always loved books, and she's always had many books and bookshelves. So um, she would have certain books, you know, talking about homosexuality. And as soon as I had a friend come over, or I had a friend spend the night, just looking around and looking, you know, they would see that, and a rumor would start. And I had to deal with mean kids in school. I mean, you know, it's one thing being Hispanic and already being a minority, but then having everyone talk crap to you and say hateful things to you because of your mom's choice and lifestyle. So much hate is what I got from it. Hate. And as if I was infected because my mom was like that. Like, that's exactly how those kids made me feel, you know. And unfortunately, I had been like diagnosed very young having ADHD. So at that time, I was on Ritalin, which anyone who knows about Ritalin know that's some nasty ass shit, and it's some fucked up shit. It does not. It makes you into a zombie. So all these feelings and emotions, once again, were being held down, you know, and suppressing everything that I could feel because I wanted to talk, I wanted to do things, but I felt like all I could do was think about it. Like on that medication, like I would look at someone and like be saying all these things, but not have the strength to actually just, you know, defend myself, which came later, of course, but I had to learn the hard way, and it didn't help being on that medication. So that is where I'm gonna leave you. I'm gonna leave you right there. And we're about 22 minutes into this, so my next log, which will be video log 3, will be dealing with what I dealt with in school and how it does consist of bullying and bullying to a third degree, if you ask me. But we ended up, my mother's lover's daughter somehow ended up going to the same middle school, even though like they weren't together, we were living separately. Her daughters ended up going to the same middle school that I was going to, and it started a war. Is what it started, because at this point I was in, you know, middle school, and I couldn't get away from them. I couldn't even get away from their kids, you know. And of course, her dealing with what she was dealing with, of course, because she was a victim as well. She was ashamed of her mom as well, because she went around the whole school, like the whole school, and told people how my mother turned her mother, who was straight, gay, and that they were lovers and they were together, to the point where people were calling me names and people were saying, oh, your mom does this, your mom does that. And I'm just like, where are you hearing this from? And finally someone told me. And when I confronted her, because I did confront her on the courtyard, we got into a fight and she pushed me down, because I was trying to defend that our mothers were together because they liked each other, they loved each other. They weren't together because my mom turned her gay. It was a choice. Your mom wanted to be with my mom wanted to be with your mom. It was, no one was pulling anyone's leg or twisting no one's arm. So I just remember, once again, not being able to talk to my mom. Once again, not talking to anybody, not letting anybody know what was going on. Which that anger ended up boiling into me hating my mother's lifestyle, hating what my mother was, to the point where I started to rebel and I started to act out. And as I'm in middle school, we ended up relocating again, which I was so grateful because I didn't have to see her anymore or deal with the bullying that I was dealing with there. I was starting over, starting fresh, starting new. And we were actually in the same town as my grandmother, so I felt I liked it, you know. But that's going to be a whole nother story because I think this is it for the night. But the next time I do my log, it'll be now just picking up where I left off right here. So anyway, I hope everyone had a really good Monday. If not, tomorrow will be better. And don't think that I'm just here to tell my wah story. It's not even about that. It's seriously, there are so many positive things that I want to talk about that has happened, that I've been very, very blessed that I've gone through. You know what I mean? So this is just something I want to share. And it's just sharing my story, hearing it from me. Now, with that being said, you have a really good night. Ciao, Facebook fam. Oh, Facebook fam. Look at that. Sorry. YouTube. Peace.